All right, it's been a couple of weeks, but the button still works. We are back with the illustrious Nate the lawyer. And while we are away, there is a little bit of a defamation lawsuit that happened in Ohio, I think. I believe it was Ohio, Adams County, Ohio, specifically between Afroman and the local police department.
Yeah, I'm assuming everybody understands the story from what happened. The police got a confidential informant goes to the police and says, "Hey, Afro Man is drug trafficking, human trafficking. It's a house of horrors in his basement. People need help." So this was
Almost like a SWAT.
a cop. Yeah, it's similar like a SWAT, but the person went to the police and the police knew who the person was. So now
Mm.
there are certain protections where if it's an anonymous tip, that's one thing. It's less likely police can trust it to get a search warrant. But since this was a confidential informant, there's some questions about whether this informant had a beef with Afro Man to get the cops, whether how this person know the information they had they ever been in Afro Man's house. But whatever happened, the judge was granted the search warrant based on this unidentified confidential informant's information.
Was it the
Um,
same judge who presided over the case ultimately?
I don't believe so. I think it was a different judge, but I'll look
And
it up though.
and what is the recourse for things like that? Now, I know that they protect, um, I think they protect false reporters of sex crimes, for example, quite a lot. I know there are some who have been prosecuted for falsely accusing, but this is not a sex crime. It's something else. But if it can be proven that there is a beef or there was an intent, is that prosecutable? I mean, it is almost like a SWAT.
Well, again, there are different versions. Like the person who's if the person is lying. So the way we used to do it is that you'd have to actually take the confidential informant in front of the judge. That
Mhm,
person would have to be sworn in and then give their testimony. And if that person's found to be lying, you have things like perjury and things of that nature because you are giving testimony under thing. And you could do things like filing a false police report. Those are options that could happen. But I'm assuming in this particular instance, the cops, because the cops are essentially immune from any like
mhm.
if they cause damage, they're essentially immune. But the person giving the information isn't. So I think that's what Afroman's recourse could be because if the person, let's say for instance, this was a person who had been a confidential informant for years, had
Mhm.
given good information to the cops before, and had built up credibility, then it's less likely that anybody's going to fault the cops for relying on this information, but
Mhm.
they would fault the person who's giving that bad information.
I gotta jump in though. You said about, how the cops are immune. I agree that they are legally immune, but I gotta give it to Afroman a little bit. You know what they're not immune to? Humiliation.
Yeah. Yes.
And credit to this because think about it. How would you, and I encourage the chat and everybody else to answer this, how would you feel about having your house raided, your property destroyed because there was property destroyed in that search? His place was violated, honestly. Just because it's the law enforcement doesn't make it that different than a burglary, in my opinion, especially if it's uncalled for. I feel like that is a borderline crime in of itself, and I give Afroman credit for using footage of this against them to kind of get his own piece back. Like he lost money, he lost property. He's making a lot of money, I hope, on his music and his
Yeah.
coverage of this now.
I think the issue comes down to if this wasn't Afro Man and just some regular person,
Mhm,
somebody lies and gives police bad information. They bust into your house, they break down your door, break down your gate, cause all this damage, and then Afro Man just said, "Hey, listen, can you at least pay back for my door, pay back for my gate?" And they said, "Kind of f you, it's just those are the breaks." So how does the regular individual fight back? And then like why did they disconnected his cameras and things of that nature? So, you know, if you come in and like I like what Afroman said, if you come into my house, you do all this damage, then eventually, and now you saying that I can't take the video of you doing it and some type of recovery from it, that doesn't make sense. So I agree, but again, and I think people fail to realize Afroman's lawsuit was also dismissed because he sued them too. So you
Mhm.
have you have kind of counterpoint. Everybody lost, but I think at the end, Afroman honestly won
Well, I think he
based on what we
won
have.
because of sales of his music, and he can ride this for a while. He's got a bit of a hero, visage going on, and he even testified. They said, "Oh, you have a pretty large Instagram account." And he goes, "Fairly big, but
Yeah,
proportionally speaking." But he gained, I think he said, 250,000 followers on Instagram because of this lawsuit. So we've got the Streisand effect, I think, working for Afroman in this particular case. So wouldn't you agree?
I definitely think so. And I think the problem with the cops is that I don't know what type of point they were trying to make, but I think there was a lot of mistakes in terms of strategy because I think some claims were better than others, and but the problem is that when you have strong and weak claims and you put them all together, it can go either one or two ways. Sometimes the strong claims can strengthen the weaker claims. Like I
Yeah.
think the one about being called, like the one about the ones the jury struggled with happened to be like the one with the woman and him saying all these negative things about her. They struggled with that one.
Yeah,
And I
some
think
rough
the
language, sure.
and then there's the one about, one of the cops being a PDF file.
Well, you have
That
the
was
video on
that
that.
was that yeah, that was the one that was, I think, strong. But then the weaker ones, like he slept with my wife and he said this in a rap song, I think those are so incredibly weak that in litigation you can go the two ways. You can say, well, these strong ones are going to help these weak ones. I know these are going to survive and they'll hopefully pull up some of these weak ones. But I think this had the opposite effect where if you are saying that Afro Man's whole persona is essentially parody, comedy, you can't say, well, he said all 90% of the stuff he says is comedy and parody, but this 10% is
Right.
real. It's either you got to take the whole pie or you don't. And I think that's kind of what trapped up this. But let's look at
Well,
one of the go ahead.
and on that, because I'm not okay. Look, I do not listen to a lot of rap music, etc. But would you state that he essentially made a series of diss tracks?
Yeah, that's exactly what this is.
Okay.
Well, there's one that was just another one. A lot of people don't realize is Drake versus now I'm going to forget his name, but it's Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar said essentially made the implication in the song that Drake was a, you know, PDF file with A minor, right? He was like, so he said something like that.
And it wasn't the musical note, A minor.
It was, yeah, it was.
It
It
wasn't,
wasn't the music
versus A
line.
major.
Yeah,
It was A
it was.
minor.
It was
I thought
A
that was a
minor. Yeah,
tonality thing.
it was pretty cold. It was pretty cold. But that lawsuit kind of played out too, because so someone was saying, but it's in a diss track, and in a diss track, you say things that maybe aren't true, because you're just trying to have fun with it. So
Like a roast.
yeah, exactly. But I think there are limits to what you can say and how it's portrayed. And I think and we've seen this happen before. All you people who follow this channel, I call it the Tucker Carlson defense. Eric
Maddow.
calls it the Rachel Maddow
No, I
defense.
call it both, and they're
It's really
buddies,
both,
by the way.
yeah. And just to understand what we mean. And Tucker Carlson said about the Playboy Playmate that she committed extortion. She extorted Trunks. She committed a crime.
Mhm.
Judge comes back and says, well, listen, Tucker's show is an opinion show. He says it's an opinion, it's an opinion, it's an opinion. So no reasonable person will look at an opinion show and think he's talking facts. He's giving his opinion on something. Same thing with Rachel Maddow. She said something was obviously untrue, obviously false, admitted it was false, admitted it was untrue. But they said on an opinion show, even though it says Fox News or MSNBC News, the show is an opinion show. It's called an opinion show. No reasonable person would think that their opinions are
Hold
facts.
on. You said what Tucker said. Now, what did Rachel Maddow say? If I
Oh,
recall, she
let
said
me say
it
exactly. Yeah.
was literally fill in the blank. So she even, didn't have that because, and believe me, I'm not in the mood to defend Tucker Carlson in any way, but that could have been a colloquial term too when he said, in my opinion, that's practically extortion, or that could be seen as extortion.
Yeah, but the thing that hurt Tucker was that when the other guy, like there was another guy with him, and he said, "No, it's not extortion. We don't have the facts." And he's like, "No, this is extortion. I'm calling this like he tripled down on
So then it is equal.
So that's what I'm saying. It's equal, yeah.
And, okay, so 100% equal. Cool.
But even though, like, in both situations, the essentially result was the same, and that's what happened with, I think, Afroman's case was the same thing. So now we have like the juror who.
Oh, well, let's play. I interrupted before you played the video clip of the one charge that almost had teeth. That is a little bit dicey.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So let's talk about. So that's the pedo one. All right. So I'm going to play a clip of what Afroman's post, because this is not in the video. This is what he posted, and you put a poll in the chat, and we're going to ask people: is this defamatory? Now, it's not true what's being said, and it was published to a third party. But the issue here is going to be: is it defamatory? It's coming from Afroman, who's a satirical, comical rapper. Are you ready to put the poll out?
Okay.
I'm
sorry. I was spacing out. I've got to.
No, I'll make it. I got it. Because I want to have the poll ready to put out.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll get it while you're doing that.
Oh yeah. It's just defamation question mark.
Yeah.
All right. So the poll, you haven't sent it out yet. Don't send it out.
I have not. I'm working on it. I'm sorry. I was spacing out. The chat just had me engrossed completely. But no worries. I have it right now. Start a poll.
Right. Don't start it yet. Let's play. Let's play the clip, and then let's see if everybody agrees whether this is. So we're playing a clip.
Poll started
of the thing. Here is what Afroman said.
As I've indicated to you, he called Brian Newland a pedophile. Not called him. He posted it, published it all over the internet in various posts. He found a photo of Detective Newland from a Shop with a Cop event that Mr. Newland attended with little kids, disadvantaged kids in the community, shop with a cop, get them to know law enforcement. Mr. Foreman found a photo of Brian Newland holding one of these children that he worked with. And am I reading the date right? September 2nd, 2023?
Yes.
And I'm not going to ask you to read it, but I will read part of it just to make sure it's in the record and that people are clear on what it said. This is the uneducated, can't count pedophile police officer that stole my money. His name is baby-making Brian, child molesting, newborn baby mama, newborn Newland, Detective Brian Newland. I have a song coming out about him. The chorus goes like this. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Brian Newland is a flag. He used to play with little toys. Now he plays with little boys. Watch your little boys around Brian Newland. He's very bold. He will fondle little boys' testicles and butt cheeks right in front of you in broad daylight. This is a public service announcement. Stay safe. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
So,
interesting. The poll was shifting as it went. It started out yes, and then it started to shift to no. Now it's no by an edge, but it flips to 50-50. Now it's growing on no, and I can see why that happened. The more context that was put into this post, in my opinion, the more ludicrous it became. Like in front of everybody, out in public, and blah blah. I think that it very potentially was to start, but as it went on and on and on and added kind of layers of ludicrousness, then it became less so. It's still really ugly. I would not post that.
I want to make sure it was not true. It's what was being said was not true. The thing that saves it, though, is that would any reasonable person believe Afroman is spouting facts there? He's a satirical rapper. He's saying this is going to be my new song lyrics, and essentially they're rhyming. Would a reasonable person think that that's accurate, that that's true?
And am I correct when I say the more and more exaggerated it is, the less and less a reasonable person would get confused.
To be true. And here is what the let's go. So I want to show you guys. This is the let me do this. Let me pull the channel because I do want to give credit to where credit's due. So because somebody else they got these interviews, so I definitely want to bring attention to where we get this thing from. I'm gonna share my screen.
Somebody wrote, if it's a rhyme, it ain't no crime. Well done, Otto.
Here is let me remove this from stage, and this is the stage. So here's the channel. It's called the Defense Diaries Podcast, and they actually had, this is the lawyer for Afroman. They call him the bearded man. And then they had one of the jurors on right after him. And the juror sits here and speaks and tells about her experiences and what the jury found to be good and what the jury didn't like. So one of the things they talked about in this podcast, which I'm about to bring up, is this issue about well, you know what we'll do? Here's the question. The questions that they asked were, one, just trying to find some. So what were the jury unanimous about the theft count? Now, the first thing we want to point to is that Afroman was saying that some of his money was stolen by the police, and that was one of the defamation claims. He knows his money wasn't stolen. So the jury was asked that question. They said they weren't unanimous. But I'm trying to find where she says, so first let's talk about, first I'm going to pull up this. This is what she said about the judge and whether she thought the judge was actually fair to Afroman or being fair to Afroman, or whether the judge was biased toward Afroman. This is what the jury
and there's a big concern about that. Before you even play that, there are some facts that bring this into question. From what I understand, the judge ruled against Afroman and said that both parties have to pay for their legal expenses.
Yeah, because the law, the slap law was passed after the trial started. If it was before the trial started, Afroman would have gone and got that money. But yeah, I saw that part. So he has to pay, but that's generally the way it goes. Even one, it should have been good.
Okay, so you've got the video up, or
yeah, what I'm doing. I'm just making sure I got the right thing.
And then somebody else is saying that the police provided the evidence about the stolen money. He didn't make it up.
Well, no, I think he was lost like $600 because he said it was $5,000 and $500 or $600 were missing. So that was that issue. But hold on, let me put this on stage. So here is the question and the answer from the juror from this.
Steelman, whichever, says where we left off was, what did the judge say to them? That's what cut out. So once he said stuff to you, what did he say?
He come back and told us thanks, and he wanted to know what we got so hung up on. And one of the jurors told him it was the actual malice, and he wanted to know if he explained everything good enough. And we told him yes. And one of the jurors asked, do you think these songs and videos will stop now? And he said, look at him out there, his big ego, he's loving this and it'll never stop. Or he basically, we knew he didn't like him after that.
So you're telling me that the judge was asking you also kind of what went wrong?
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
That sounds like the prosecutor speaking to the jury, right? I mean, that would be entirely appropriate after the case, if the jury's available to interview. You as a prosecutor, Nate, right? You might consult the jury and just say, what was it that made you decide this and this and this? Or the defense lawyer, whichever way it went. But for the judge to ask that, and the questions being asked really feels almost like he's speaking from the stance of a prosecutor. Or am I projecting into these questions?
Well, it makes you feel like there was some. Now, it makes you feel like there was some bias toward Afroman based on that interaction, and I think like this will never stop. This and like those things, but whether he was biased and whether that bias then actualized into some procedural bias or something like that, that may be hard. I think this would have been hard I think most judges would have not allowed this to go to a jury based on the satirical nature and what the context was set forward. Obviously, a comedian on stage is not going to be sued for defamation, right? Because you can't get past the whole fact that it's by nature it's unbelievable. But I think and I think that's what this juror and the jury found out at the end, that hey, this judge, he wasn't really for impartiality. It seems like he was more for the plaintiffs in this particular case, and now wants to know what he could do, what he did wrong, because it sounded like to me the judge was kind of asking like, what the hell did I do wrong? Why'd you guys
Which, by the way, he should technically have not done nothing wrong, right? His job was just to oversee it, and the jury decided. That would imply the judge did his job. So asking that question's odd.
And here's another thing. Here's another question. This one is, the question is going to be, what was they asked? Was it pivotal for you guys to keep falling back to reach a verdict? And one of them says that the cops were saying how this defamation hurt them so much, but they never missed out on any promotions. They were able to have peaceful meals when they were outside. Like, if this defamation was so hard where you're asking for $4 million, then you have to show us that your life has kind of been wrecked. But here, the juror was like, they didn't show that. They actually showed that things were pretty all right. Here, let me show this on screen. Oh, let me spread this out because there it is. Makes it a little easier for me to get these. All right.
Like statements are false, or whether Afroman had the right to say them, or was it something else? Was there like one kind of question that you guys kind of like kept falling into in terms of like, we need to answer this question in order to reach a verdict one way or another?
One of the big things was no one had missed out on promotions, and that they all said that they could still have peaceful meals out with their families. I remember those two were like,
And we talked about this offline a little bit, and you had said that a lot of it came down to the legal standard on
Alice.
on how, right, on malice, and on whether a reasonable person would have, given that it was a video, or for the video, given that it was a video. And I think it was for Brian Newland, given the actual wording of the post, like he's doing this to kids right in the bright of day, right out in front of people, that you're saying that clearly, like, a reasonable person's not going to think he's actually doing that in front of people, right?
None of us actually believed he was doing any of that.
What do you think, Eric?
I don't think anybody would believe any. It gets into the ludicrous.
That's exactly what you said. It was like, it was so crazy that it was like, he's not doing this out in front of everybody. Like, no one believes that, right?
Yeah, well, and the funny thing is, I hadn't heard all the songs that were on the album, but I do remember Yellow Pound Cake. And because it was just like this crazy headline of him using that, and the cop looking at it, and that was obviously funny. I mean, it had a comedic flair to it. He's like, "Oh, you're breaking my cake. Why are you breaking?" And all of that, and the lemon pound cake. I mean, a cop looking at it and then backing up and then looking at it. That one was lightweight. Obviously, he was a little harsher in other tracks, but
and one thing I also want is that also it's interesting how this juror and the other jurors felt about the judge, because here is the question is, do you feel the judge was against the defense given how he was treating the lawyer? So here's what that juror says about that interaction.
I'm curious on that.
Give me 1 second and share this instead. There we go.
And obviously, I'm not expecting you to speak for the jury, but from your own perspective, did you feel like, did that make you feel like the judge was against the defense? Did it make your your eyebrows go up?
I mean, there was definitely some tense moments, but as jurors, we just stayed focused on the facts and the evidence and the judge's instructions. But I mean, and also none of us knew how court was supposed to work. Is the judge supposed to like keep telling you things throughout? I mean, I didn't know how bad that was until afterwards. And then I saw a lot of TikTok lawyers and stuff talking about how messed up they thought it was or whatever. But
So let me ask you, because we as lawyers, we always worry that when a judge chastises us in front of the jury, when a judge tells the jury basically this lawyer is doing it wrong, that the jury is just going to be like, well, this lawyer must really be screwing up because this judge keeps saying something. And on the flip side, a lot of people say, well, jurors can sense that when a judge is being a little bit too harsh with one side or the other. For you, which way did you take it?
hold on. I mean, I don't want to say, I don't want to bash a judge or anything, but I mean, it did seem like he was on, like he had something against, the defendants or something, but I mean, it didn't factor into our decisions, I mean,
Right, no, I understand it.
Yeah, so when the juror,
What her answer, there's a lot of meat in there that is not necessarily being vocalized. But when asking her directly, like, did it concern you, all that, and she's just starts stammering like crazy, like, oh, I don't want to get a judge in any trouble or anything. I think that perfectly highlights the whole problem. Have you heard of the Milgram experiment?
Yes.
Okay, well, this is why I want to bring it up, because there's something called an appeal to authority, or there's an authority figure, right? And this is one of the most powerful mental biases out there. They've done a lot of experiments on it. Milgram being the most famous. I'll take a lightweight one, where they had somebody had a bunch of people, and these are social experiments, and they're standing at a crosswalk, right? And they have somebody who's dressed like me, kind of a t-shirt and slack or whatever, jaywalk across the street, and all the people standing did not jaywalk. They didn't follow, they didn't listen, they didn't do anything, right? But then they swapped it out later and had somebody wearing a nice suit, impeccably dressed, everything else. Boom, jaywalk. The whole crowd followed that person. The Milgram experiment takes us to a whole new level, which is you have somebody who is in a white coat. And I'm bringing this deliberately because a white coat makes you think doctor, right? You don't know that they're a doctor. They had no idea that the person was a doctor. It was just there's a person there who told them to turn the dial of a particular item that was training a student on the other side of the wall. And supposedly it was giving a shock to the student on the other side of the wall when they got a question wrong. As the experiment went on, people would turn the dial, and the person on the other side of the wall, who was an actor, would start screaming, ow, like this is getting worse and worse. It is increasing levels. Finally, they were screaming, oh my God, my heart, I'm going to have a heart attack. And the white coat person kept saying, you need to follow the experiment. You need to proceed. And it turned out a very high percentage, the majority, actually would have killed the person on the other side of the wall. Now, where I'm going with this is replace the white coat with a judge's robe. And if you have somebody of such authority in their courtroom, and believe me, some of them seem to act like they are a king while they're in the courtroom, attacking one side, a lot of people, out of respect for said authority, are going to say, that lawyer's pulling shenanigans. Oh, I can't trust that lawyer, which I would argue, if that's a defense lawyer especially, is extremely detrimental to the defense. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. But I think so this works. You're talking about the authority figure, the white coat, but there are two dynamics at work too, because you could also have that authority in the social group. For instance, there was the similar experiment done where what they do is they'll have 11 people sit down in a theater, and on the screen they'll say, all right, raise your hand if A is larger than B. And everybody, and then they'll show you those things. You'll see two lines, A, and if A is larger than B, you raise your hand. So what happens is they'll give you the first 10. And A will be obviously larger than B. Everybody will see it, and everybody will raise their hand in unison, right? All 11 people. And then for the 12th one, they'll switch it, where B is a little bit larger than A, but it's questionable. But to most observers, B is obviously larger. They'll have everyone else keep their hand down. No one will raise their hand. No one will say.
That's the opposite. That's audience capture versus an authority figure.
So then, the audience, the authority is the social dynamic, is the group. We want to stay continuously with the group. So, and I'm thinking in this particular case, the authority of the judge was combating the authority of this group of jurors, because I'm thinking in unison saw like, hey, as a group, we're not seeing what the judges see. So that buttressed both of them, because in the Milgram experiment, if you have multiple people there, it's a different dynamic than if it's just one juror versus one judge, if you understand what I'm saying.
Well, of course,
the group dynamic was able to help them overcome what happened in Milgram.
Which is very, very fortunate in this case. However, you heard the stammering of her own voice. You heard the fear of a judge. To this day, it's already over. She's out. And she specifically said, I don't want to, bash it. That's a very real fear. I heard that in her voice. That is a very real power that judge has. And fortunately, they overcame it. And this is a resounding argument for a jury system. Thank God the jury got it right. However, and by the way, as a lawyer, you will admit this, prosecutors will try to put people on the defense who tend to defer to authority figures. Don't they?
Well, that would make sense, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense. And a defendant would want people to be somebody who's anti-government, who's distrusting of the government, because you're playing averages here. But I think at a point, the thing that won this trial was reasonableness. It had nothing to do with whether these claims were false, right? These claims were defamatory, they were false. But it's reasonableness. Was it reasonable that a reasonable person listen to that Afroman song and believe that crap was true?
I think one other thing helped him.
Mm-hmm.
He's funny.
Yeah, it was.
I'm sorry to say, but if it was a clunky representation, if he wasn't a talented artist, he might not have won, right?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to see something as non-defamatory, especially if you find it funny. But if you don't find it funny, it starts to change things a little bit. And I think that could have, again, if he wasn't talented, if he wasn't amusing. And I do think his wardrobe was very smart. I think wearing the American flag and the sunglasses was smart. He came in there full on free speech as a walking guy.
Yeah, but I think it was smart because it showed the absurdity of his act. I'm a comedian. Look at the way I'm dressed. Look at
I'm a clown.
My biggest song is Because I Got High. All satire. This is what I do. And he introduced, I'm a comedian and rapper. So I think when you put it in that, if Afroman to me is a comedian on stage saying jokes. And if that joke, if you're the object of that joke, so be it. But it is a joke, it is unserious, and no one's believing that thing to be true. And I think that's the name of the game when it comes to Afroman. But
yeah, I'm aging myself. He's like Dr. Demento. He would appear on Dr. Demento with novelty songs and all that.
Yeah, but I think unfortunately this juror, and thank God for the jury system, because I think if this was a judge trial, that judge would have found Afroman guilty, Because it
Yeah.
seemed like that's what that's where this was going. That judge didn't like Afroman. And now we know from what the juror said that judge didn't like Afroman. But at the end of the day, I think they got it right, because I just don't think it was serious. I don't know how you could take that serious. So the next case we were going to look at was the social media case that just came down with Meta
And YouTube.
and YouTube. Yeah, 70% Meta. So for those of you who don't know, so I've been handling these cases for about 2 years now. And so I had a whole bunch of pushback. Let me tell you what happened. So first, it's video game addiction, right? So what happens is that we found out that video game companies were designing games to addict children. And this was something that they weren't doing by just like it just happened to be like, by accident. They were hiring psychologists and psychiatrists to help design games for children that were hyper addictive. So you can keep. So we found that out, right? They admit it. And the reason and how it was so easy to find out is because they would literally patent their ultra addictive methods so no one else can use them. And we can just find the patents. Here's the patents. This is how we're going to addict your children. So they laid it out. They gave you everything.
One
So
better too.
obviously,
And
Yes.
they did something else too, or rather didn't do something else. They didn't let their own children play them or have these devices. If you look at it, Silicon Valley, including Steve Jobs and these others, do not let their children have the phones. Why? So I'm sorry, go ahead.
well,
That's a consideration.
yes. So obviously, for video game addiction, now the crowd hated, blah, 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 this is BS. But I'm like, hey, it's video game addiction is the same thing. So, but simultaneously, there was a social media addiction campaign going on too, which I wasn't involved with, but now I'm involved in it. But I wasn't involved with it because everybody hated the videos. But social media addiction, it was the same thing. They're designing. Here are the patents and stuff. So
It's like gambling.
yes. So what the social media companies did, which is great. They botted us. They had this. This is all people making bad decisions. So now, fast forward to California. What happened yesterday? So what people don't understand is that you can have addictive children's games and addictive social media, right? And generally, these companies won't have to pay a dime. But where you get caught up is if you make these things addictive because this is what you want to do, and you don't warn people like, hey, we've made these things hyper addictive, so if you put your kid on it, it's likely they're going to have these things. The US government has a law called for failure to warn. You fail to warn someone of the dangers of your product. And if there's any negative side effects from, for instance, you becoming addicted to the game or addicted to the soft drink or addicted to whatever, then and you knew that not only did you know, but you were designing it for that purpose, then you could be held liable for any particular harm. Am I kind of laying this out?
You are. You just made me think of something I never realized, and I'm sorry, my brain's all over the place. But the marketing for Pringles may be one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen, because you know that it's weaponized food. You just talked about it, the food and the addiction. A lot of the tobacco companies got in to make them addictive, etc. Remember the ad campaign? Once you pop, you can't stop.
Oh, yeah.
They're literally advertising and using the marketing saying that these Pringles are so addictive, you can't stop eating them. That's kind of brilliant, isn't it? Is that not like a great legal cover for making a hyper addictive product and advertising that it's hyper addictive? I'm sorry, that's just genius.
It is, but the law says you kind of have to be clear. So let me do this. Let me play this video. This is a real drug ad, and failure to warn can be billions and billions of dollars. So you'll see more than half of this video is covered for failure to warn. So this is the medication. So this is the medication. I'm going to play this right now. I'm going to put this on. Add this to screen. Here it is.
Here's me, and here's my depression. Before I started taking Abilify, I was taking an antidepressant alone. Most days I could put on a brave face and muddle through, but Other days, I still struggled with my depression. I was managing, but it always had a way of creeping up on me. I felt stuck. I just couldn't shake my depression, so I talked to my doctor. He said adding Abilify to my antidepressant could help with my depression, and that some people had symptom improvement as early as 1 to 2 weeks. He also told me about a free trial offer from Abilify. Now, I feel more in control of my depression.
Abilify.
Now, I can stop the commercial right there. We know what Abilify is, right? Now we're halfway, we're not even really halfway through. But now the rest of this commercial is about failure to warn and them covering themselves from lawsuits.
Is not for everyone. Call your doctor if your depression worsens or if you have unusual changes in behavior or thoughts of suicide. Antidepressants can increase these in children, teens, and young adults. Elderly dementia patients taking Abilify have an increased risk of death or stroke. Call your doctor if you have high fever, stiff muscles, and confusion to address a possible life-threatening condition, or if you have uncontrollable muscle movements, as these could become permanent. High blood sugar has been reported with Abilify and medicines like it. In some cases, extreme high blood sugar can lead to coma or death. Other risks include decreases in white blood cells, which can be serious, dizziness upon standing, seizures, trouble swallowing, and impaired judgment or motor skills.
Depression used to define me.
But by the way, I got to give them credit. This is one of the more open and honest ones I've heard. At least they're playing the warning at real speed. Normally, or a lot of times I hear them with an auctioneer saying, Bill, I made it for everyone. You're going to get these side effects. And they spit it out in like 20 seconds at the end, like an auctioneer.
Well, but here, obviously, that's more than half of the ad are the side effects, because it's like, this can really coma, death, blah, blah, blah. They just laid it all out, right? So you can't say, we didn't know. We didn't know. But now, if we apply that to Facebook and what's going on between Facebook and YouTube, their argument is, well, it's not that we didn't know. The plaintiffs are saying, not only did you know, you actually designed it to do this. You designed the car to drive this way. You've designed it to actually hurt. So here is the first clip. First clip is the plaintiff. So the first issue was the failure to warn product liability, which you just talked about. The plaintiff's argument was that Facebook and YouTube knew their products were harmful and addictive. They failed to warn parents of addiction risk and mental health consequences, and that this woman who sued was impacted by this. And the platforms, they said that their platforms are not inherently dangerous and the mental health outcomes are complex and were not caused by a single app. It may be caused by all apps in general, but you can't blame just one app for social media addiction when all these other apps can contribute to it. So that was their argument. Here is that clip. Share this one instead. Oh, here we go.
We continue with our breaking news coverage out of Los Angeles, where a jury found tech giants Meta and Google liable for failing to warn its users about the dangers of their social media platforms. The jury voted to award $3 million in damages, with Meta responsible for 70% of that and YouTube on the hook for the remaining 30%. The 6-week trial has featured high-profile witnesses, including Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta Platforms.
Can you pause for a second? I just thought of something funny. It's nice to see that YouTube is having to pay out a 30% rather than take 30% like they always do. Just saying.
Oh my God. Here, so look, here is the, oh, let me put this back up. I hate to sometimes StreamYard, they piss me off, but here it is. There it goes. Back on screen.
Spending on Instagram, on Facebook. And so that's what the jury had to parse through over these 8 days, asking multiple questions of the judge. And here we are today with a verdict. And while $3 million, for most people sounds like a lot of money, it's a minor, teeny tiny drop in the bucket.
That's true.
A company like Meta, what is more important here is what the final outcome is after this. I would imagine we may see an appeal or some kind of
The
additional
precedent's worse.
what that ultimately leads to when it comes to the products. But this is about, it's an approach, it's an interesting legal approach, right? This is taking addiction and consumer product safety laws in the case of New Mexico and using those as the vehicle to attempt to rein in these tech companies and hold them accountable. Very different than what has been approached in Congress, what has been proposed.
Yeah, because the biggest issue with these companies was the fact that they were trying to make it seem like even like they can do this
Mhm.
and addict your children and addict people, but there were no consequences, and they didn't have to warn people of it's essentially like smoking, right? That's why you get all
Of
those
course.
warnings of smoking and stuff like that.
And
Because-
food now, by the way.
Yes. Howdy.
Hey,
Yeah,
obscure.
and this is the reason why I think Meta and Facebook lost, because the algorithm itself is designed to keep you hooked and addicted.
I would
And
say
I have gotten
weaponized
one
would
of
be a
these-
good term for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now and again, it wasn't like the issue here is it wasn't like it's a secret what they were doing. It's just could they be held liable for doing it?
Right. Well, they were trying to use the network effect and cover. And because they're not alone, because it's so prevalent where everything is being made addictive in terms of interactions online, they're kind of like, everybody's doing it. What do are you gonna, go after everybody? And how can you what do you call that? It's is it diverse liability or something like that, where you could say, okay, well, maybe, maybe we're a factor, but we're only like, 1% out of 100 things that they're interacting with. Why are you picking on us? Is that kind of their argument?
Yes. They're saying that there may be more factors involved. And because again, there's so many different social media platforms, how do you know which one addicts you? But the argument here is that, but I think this person was able to narrow it. I only use these platforms, right?
Right.
I only use YouTube and I'm not using everything else. And that kind of limited it to them. Okay, so this is, and you can, and all this is verifiable through like, the data that you use and your logs and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Here, matter of fact, listen to this, because this I think is important. This is what the jury, why the jury came to its conclusion and what it means.
These products were designed to have a defect in them, which is that they were designed to be a literal drug. And so what you saw plaintiffs arguing in this case in California is that these features like the endless scrolling, the ability to like and have followers and things like that, even these filters that can be used on Instagram, that those all were defects of this product, and that the that Meta and YouTube and those platforms, that they knew how harmful and addictive that these features were, and yet in the face of that they continued to use them and really put profits over safety. Now in New Mexico, that case was a little bit different. It was about child sexual predators that had used the platforms. The allegation were that these platforms knew that these predators were on their platforms and they did nothing really to stop it. That legal theory has to do with really what has traditionally been a federal shield for liability for content that is posted on these platforms. Traditionally, it has shielded these big companies from liability, but we're seeing that theory, get holes poked in it.
Yeah, so I do want to say this. A lot of people would think, well, $3 million it's really nothing for them. But I think people have to understand that. That's one person in one case. How many people are using this product? How many people are getting addicted?
Well, and that's the worry. That's why this is a concern.
Yeah, there's a
3
multiplier
million
here.
is a joke to YouTube and Meta,
But if
but
you put 100
but
people
if
in that 3 million,
1,000
300
people or a
million.
class comes out, then it's going to have real bite.
Oh yeah. I remember in the 2010s, Facebook was called out for using the platform to test psychological theories, then using what they learned to shape the platform for profit. And the people wondering why I'm not on Facebook today. It's a
Yeah.
very, very, very good point. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think, because understand this though, and I think this is important. This case is going to translate not only to this space, which is social media, but it also goes to video games and also goes to these other things that target kids in this particular way. And I think if this goes through like this, then I think the video game industry, and I also think the social media industry will have to now change what it's doing, because I don't think again, this is one case for $3 million.
Mhm.
100 people is 300 million. 1,000 people is 3 billion. And do you think do you think at least 1,000 people can make similar claims to this?
You tens and tens and tens of thousands, obviously, but there's another concern that you're not covering, and I'm a selfish bastard, and I'll freely admit it. This is one thing interesting is it's meta, which means that 70% is meta, but I think it's because it's two platforms,
Yeah.
Facebook and Instagram. Maybe that's 35% each, and then 30% for YouTube. So I just want to point that out, why the majority there. But as a YouTuber, and as people pointed out, look, you're watching on YouTube right now. Is there going to be a potential transfer of liability? Are you and I going to have to face community guidelines saying that, we're too addictive? People in the chat are already claiming jokingly, but there is reality, because there are players out there who are doing it. They're saying that I'm addicting, and thank you. Please tell a friend. I appreciate that. But there are people who are weaponizing what they are putting out to be a highly, highly addictive program. So is this going to cascade down into the creators themselves? I don't know if you thought about it. You're addictive, Nate.
Well, I think it trivializes what is happening in terms of what we're calling being addictive. And
I'm not trivializing it at all.
What I mean is, in terms of being with the argument here in terms of Facebook, is that they've designed the platform itself and the content itself to be addictive, too addictive. They went to psych and said this. Now, if you have creators who are also doing that, going to psychiatrists, psychologists, and intentionally making their content as addictive as possible, knowing it can harm people, then there's some liability out there for you. But I think in terms of being someone who's popular, but YouTube, because it's really YouTube that's addicting people to the platform, not to the particular content. So what I mean by trivializing, I think it trivializes the work YouTube and Google, like we just saw at that last super chat, have put into creating an addictive product, versus someone just us who are on that product, who are putting out content. So I think that's the thing that protects us. I'm not doing anything to make my content even more addictive. I'm not, I'm just doing what I need to do to promote it, if that makes sense.
You're trying to make it attractive in every way possible, et cetera, which by the way is a normal marketing thing. I encourage people to market as effectively but honestly, as possible to we're not a charity. There's 220 people watching us right now, and I would rather it was 20,020 people watching us right now. I'm not going to pretend to say I don't want a bigger audience. I'm just pointing out something that I worry about, to soften the blow, they may want to bring other people into it. And you are right. It's absolutely weaponized. I mean, where's TikTok in this? Obviously, this is that one woman, but you cannot tell me that TikTok or X isn't highly addictive. I mean, X, which is my favorite social media platform, or the one I use the most, is extremely addictive. And you can see through the timelines and the reactions to it, because if you post something that makes people angry, it carries up even more. And they've done studies on, hey, post something funny, do pretty good. Post something makes people angry, does really good. And so you can even show a causal effect of potentially psychological harm from the content itself. And we haven't even gotten into that. I've had Robert Epstein on. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a social scientist, a whistleblower who worked at Google as a data scientist. He talked about this and how part of the reason Google said, hey, go after us as a monopoly, was to not have to deal with the psychological harm that some of their content and the algorithm were doing to people. So it's not only making things addictive, but also creating reactions. Like, we're a very tribal society right now, Nate. I mean, we talk all the time, and we're fighting and arguing and, team this and team that, whatever it might be, a movie, politics, anything. And I would argue that the addictive nature and the manipulation going on by social media enhances all of this.
Yeah,
So this is a very deep and troubling pattern, but it's kind of hard to unring this bell.
well, I think we have what's known as an addiction economy, right?
Really?
I'm sorry, not addiction, attention economy.
We
And
do.
what I mean by that is that whoever gets the most attention on a post, on a video, or whatever, that's kind of what moves the day. Candace Owens had it for a while, and some other creators have it for particular events. So Afroman had it for a while, right? The more attention, the more money you make, and so forth and so forth. And I think since you know that that's what's needed to spend, that's that's the currency, then you do things. Then how do you keep people's attention? And I think that's the whole thing now. You can do it just naturally, where you're trying to just put content out there and let people, or you can try to manufacture it that keeping somebody's attention.
Well,
Now,
here, this is Chad. It's pretty funny. Bacon is addictive. Can I sue bacon company? Let me just say that pig died for the right to be addictive.
no, but see, this is, and the simplicity in this nature is that if I cook bacon and bacon is addictive, right? Can I sue the bacon company? Well, generally no, because it's a legal product. You use it, and that's it. But now, if I do things like put cocaine in that bacon to make it even more addictive, more than it just naturally would be, right? I'm adding additives, doing this, and I know it. Then I go and get chemists and all this stuff to make this bacon as addictive as possible. And I know that 80% of the people who use it are going to be addicted to this. That's the difference here, right? I've not just given you, if the social media products were out there,
but that's
without
happening.
all of this extra stuff. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's if the product was out there without all this extra stuff, then you got one thing. But all this, they got hit because, like you just heard, of the endless scrolling, of targeting these people things. That's what they're getting hit of, not just having the platform.
Which, by the way, is it is exactly on point to bring up the big tobacco, which shifted now to big food, because they do everything you just said. They actually do in products. They're not using cocaine. They're using salt, sugar, and fat in combinations, if you will, to make foods hyper palatable. There's actually a term for it, hyper palatable and addictive. They literally are doing that. So yeah, you're right. They are.
And again,
the same.
The issue here isn't, and again, Facebook and YouTube would have been totally fine if they just warned people this is what we're doing. Hey, we're making this product. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And obviously you don't want to warn people, because by warning them, that takes the cake in that. Please put Coke back in bacon. No, it was in Coca-Cola for a particular point.
Oh, it was. No, I mean, that's what the Coca.
That's what
is in the cola. Yes, absolutely.
So, and I know people are gonna be like, hey, I'm addicted to water, so blah, blah, blah. But again, if the product is in its natural state, then you don't have the problem. It's
sort of like a monopoly.
It's all that extra stuff they're doing.
When the whole thing of, I'm addicted to bacon, or I'm addicted to water, or whatever, it's sort of like a natural monopoly is perfectly legal if people grow and they like it. But if you do something to enhance it, or to enforce it, or to protect the monopoly, that's when it becomes illegal.
Yes. Because just like with the iPhone, people are going to bring out great products that's going to monopolize the market for a certain amount of time. But it's you extending that monopoly. But I think here, I think here, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a whole shit ton of lawsuits, and there's going to be a huge settlement, because
It has to be.
The problem people fail to realize, like, even though we're talking about this $3 million and they're going to appeal, you guys don't understand. This is 1x, because they probably spent millions of dollars on the trial in itself and the lawyers itself.
Yeah.
But we're times 100, times 1,000, times 10,000. How many people in America use social media? And those numbers now, if you're doing 50,000 different lawsuits and you're 50,000 different courts paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to lawyers, at what point do you say, let's just write this check, right? Because it just becomes too much. And I think that's the problem with these two verdicts, because there's been two verdicts, one in New Mexico and one in California. That makes running your business, the margins on running a social media company under these, it makes it very, very, very more expensive immediately. And I can see, and don't forget, there are thousands of these lawsuits out there yet to be determined. So,
Well, part of the problem too, Nate, is, I mean, look, I'll say this here. People may disagree with me, but Facebook is dying. People don't realize it, but Facebook especially is dying. It has reached its maximum saturation. Essentially, everybody who's going to have Facebook has Facebook already. And it is an older crowd and it's dying off. The fact that these cases are going through and winning, it bodes poorly for the social media companies, because I think it's showing how they're weak. It's like the tobacco companies. Remember, nobody could touch a tobacco company for decades. I mean, literally, they had doctors that were saying, here, have a cigarette, it'll make you feel better, whatever else, and advertisements and everything. But as it went on, the reputation got dented. And I think we're going to see that there just won't be a Facebook anymore. We're going to see that there won't be an Instagram anymore. I don't know what will happen with YouTube, but I think you're going to see some shifting of these companies into something else, and I believe it's already happening.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to lose sections. Like somebody put the ultimate goal to repeal Section 230. I don't think you can repeal Section 230 because I think at a point you have to kind of separate the creator from the platform. But I do think the issue here is on the platform level, the methods they're using to give the content to the consumer, which is the viewer. And I think at the point, what you'll see is this, it's a simple fix, but what you're doing is you have to pay for what you've already done or what you've legally already been. So right now, I think the smart move to do, if I was YouTube and if I was Facebook, is now we put the disclaimer out there, blah, blah, blah. So when you click on to go into, you have to click on the disclaimer. Here is a clear disclaimer of what does this, blah, 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 whatever that is.
I would go even further. I would set up.
Even read it. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yes, I would do that for sure, Nate. But if they had a lick of sense at all, they would also put together free programs and websites of, do you have a social media addiction problem? Here, get help. And I would just flood all kinds of social information, how you can enable yourself to not face blah, 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 blah. I would do that all like crazy. You can say, oh, you know what? That's a big concern. And we are very responsible citizens. And we want you to know that we care about you. So I would put the warnings there, just like it's sort of like self-deletion. This is warning, left and right.
But this is already done. Look at the back of your lottery ticket. Go to a casino and look at all the signs of gamblers.
Right, that's why they get away with this shit.
Yeah, because they put it out there, right? You're going to lose money. The odds are against you. But hey, come in anyway. There's on every lottery ticket, there's 1-800 Gamblers Anonymous on the back of it, right? If you got a gambling problem, right? That's what they say. So it's not like this is something that is out of the realm. I just think that they were just riding the rail saying, hey, we don't have to do this and nobody's going to hold us accountable for
arrogance.
So let's just do it, right? What the casinos had to do it because people are actually losing tangible money. So it's a little something different. Where this is social media addiction, but now people are getting seriously hurt. So now they have to but now I'm assuming they're going to play the casino game. Okay, well, now people are being injured. Here it is. So,
and by the way, they could do AI stuff too. I mean, it would be nice if they put things into the programs themselves, which they could do. They could say, we've noticed that you've been doom scrolling now for 2 hours. Well, you should take a break and walk outside. And if they put those things in there and those kinds of flags, that will help their defense, won't it?
Well, yeah, but again, if this is a failure to warn case, you just got to warn, right?
Right.
That's essentially what this is. You have a dangerous product. You didn't tell me what's dangerous. Just like so, I think that solves the problem. Now, how often you got to do it, how much you got to do, whether you can do it in your terms of service or disclaimer, That may be the thing. And I think that's the opportunity where their legal teams have messed up, because they should have already had this claim, because I could have told you this was coming. I think they were just so confident that they wouldn't have gotten a judgment, because when people think of addiction, social media addiction, like even when I was doing the video game addiction, oh, these are just weak people. This is nothing. This is nonsense. But now that a jury sat down and saw, like, oh my God, they hired psychiatrists to design this specifically to addict children, and found that 80% or whatever the percentage of children would be addicted after a certain amount of times, and this was the plan. That changes the dynamic, because now somebody who does get hurt, somebody who is addicted, now it's your direct fault. So I
think the video game industry is already ahead of them on this, though. I believe that they are stating that things can be addictive, especially the MMOGs or whatever, because there were people who like lost their life, their jobs, this and that, because they were so addicted to playing these online games. And I can't remember the names of them. If I say World of Warcraft, that may or may not be correct. There was one earlier, though, in the early aughts that was very Ultima Online. I can't remember it, but there was a big one. And I mean, it was so prevalent that people were known for that. They wouldn't go to work. They would do this. They would do that. And I think the video games have been doing a better job. And they also are like, oh, this game is so addictive. Like, oh, you can't stop playing on your iPhone this particular game. So they are using the once you pop, you can't stop principle too, I think.
Which makes sense. Which makes sense, I think, because you want your video, and it's one of those things where you want your video game to be addictive. You want your videos to be addictive. But the thing is that, if you it's that inside knowledge type thing, and how you're planning on doing it and the results. If you know something like this can get detrimental to someone, then I think that's the problem. And that's the problem with YouTube. Because again, it's not them sent to one video. It's the fact that you can't when you start, you can't stop, like you're saying with the Pringle. And I think people need to really understand the separation here between the platform's design to keep you on platform, not watching any particular content. It's just the design is to keep you on platform. I think X, YouTube, TikTok all have those algorithms that are designed to do that.
And it's not only, this is just taking it into the virtual world. This already exists. Like, did you know that malls, especially department stores and malls, are designed where if you're standing at any point in the store towards the center, you can't see the door?
Yeah.
That they have mirrors and placements, so you're in lost in a maze, and all you do is see product. So
casinos don't have windows and clocks. They don't have windows and clocks because they don't want you to know what time it is.
Exactly.
And where to go outside. So yeah. Most places are designed that way. But if you think about it, it makes sense, I think, in the aggregate. But the problem here, is not it. You can design something too well. And I think that's the problem here. And they went, and when you start really plugging into it, you get to the point where I know people are going to be harmed by the way I designed this. And that's the question now that you got to overcome. Do I need to warn people about this? And like I said, you can gamble it. All casinos and all gambling sites warn you ahead of time.
By law.
You're going to lose money. Yeah. And now I'm assuming social media companies are going to start doing that because, again, like I'm saying, this is a big deal for them. This is a big problem for them. If I'm their attorneys, the first thing I'm saying, we got to make sure this starts happening like today or tomorrow. But then also, too, you'll start getting those smart attorneys who will start saying, hey, if they're warning us today, what about all those people who were injured before this warning? Why are you? But the good part about it is in the law, there's the rules of civil procedure. You can't use subsequent remedial measures as proof of prior liability. So if let's say if somebody slips and falls and then I mop it up, the plaintiff can't come and say, oh, see, he mopped it up because he knew that they'll say, no, that's a subsequent. You can't use the fact he mopped it up or cleaned it up as proof of liability because you want people to fix problems so other people don't get hurt.
That makes sense. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for a business to correct a problem because then that's just going to point everybody to the problem that they have.
Yes, but I think here by fixing the problem, the issue is that those people will be suing for stuff before that problem happened. Hey, I slipped and fell 3 years ago, right? I don't care the fact you cleaned it up, the fact that I had to slip and fall. So, but we'll see what happens. Well, with that being said, what do we got going on?
Okay, I've got one. Do you want to do the one last thing, or are we going to wrap up right now?
Oh, well, I have to wrap up because I have.
Okay, no problem. We'll just wrap up and
a little bit more time than I expected.
No problem. No problem. This is perfect. What do I have going on? I'm releasing a video later today with an FBI agent who was in Oklahoma City when the bombing occurred. He was stationed actually in Oklahoma City. A lot of people are going to be very irritated with it, is the best way I could put it, because there are two narratives. There is the government narrative of what happened with Oklahoma City, and then there is a counter narrative which does not agree with the official story of Oklahoma City. Now, a lot of things are true. Timothy McVeigh, in fact, did drive a Ryder truck. That Ryder truck did explode. Many people died. He was there. He did it. All of that's true. The question is the scope and the width. One, he's not a lone wolf guy. That's actually proven 100 ways, because there's somebody else who is in prison for life. So automatically lone wolf's out the window. Conspiracy's automatically there too. When two people are convicted, that's a conspiracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it potentially goes wider than that. So this person is towing very tightly on the official narrative. But as an interviewer, I wish to talk to all sides. So it is going to be interesting. And I want to see what, people have to think of it. It's on my channel, Eric Hunley, just my name. Hope you consider checking that out.
That sounds interesting. And the fact that you got all of this really, really, really good surveillance of all this stuff. It's not surveillance, but all this background information. It really gives, I think, a more intimate view of what actually happened. You know what I'm saying? And I always love those type of things when you get more information about what really happened.
Yeah.
For me, I have, so you remember that case where the sheriff shot the judge?
Oh, yeah. The one who was running the women?
Yes.
The judge who was running the women, not the sheriff.
Well, allegedly. I want to make sure I say allegedly, because no, the judge is dead. So this
he can't sue you. No.
He can't sue me, right? But so this is so remember, this is what happened. This is where the guy shot, but they released all of the body cam footage. So they released all the videos. So for instance, what happened before, you could see them, like this is before. So they released all the body cam footage where the judge is there, vaping,
his vape, and the judge lighting a cigarette.
With all his crew and everything, with the sheriff there before. You can see they go to lunch, like you see everything. Here's the sheriff coming back. But also what you do get to see is what happens right before the shooting. So before we didn't have any of this, but I'll have to rewind it. You see,
so we have context.
Yes. So we see the sheriff comes in and asks everyone to leave.
With the judge and all of the other court staff
and all the other court staff, because they were at lunch, so they leave. Then you can see here when he asked the judge for his phone.
7 minutes pass where the two longtime friends appear to be having a cordial conversation being said, but the judge knows where he'll eventually ask him for his
So he
all right, don't show the shooting.
No, I'm not going to show the shooting. He's asking the judge for his phone.
Lock code. He starts scrolling through the phone where it appears.
So he had the judge's phone in his hand. He got his phone in his hand, and he asked the judge for his lock code.
As though he's comparing something from the judge's phone to his own phone. Mickey tosses back the judge's phone and stands up where he'll eventually unholster his gun.
So, we zoom in on the phone and get to see what the hell, like you can see like what's on his phone and all this stuff, which is crazy. And then after that, you get to see him running, not running from police, but him walking out. People call. You should see he's arrested. What he said right after he was arrested.
Oh, nice.
And the whole thing. So you get the whole picture of everything here.
I heard it has something to do with his daughter.
Well, yeah. We'll see, because I have another one where you zoom in about it, and you can actually see what he was looking at on his screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like at one time, you see he turns on the camera to record himself. So it's a whole little messy thing. So there's a lot going on here, but I thought this would be a good update to that story because I think a lot of people, we heard about it, but now since we have all of this context to it, I think it'll be better. So that's what I've been working on. Hopefully it'll come out in a couple of days. And obviously the social media addiction, all this other stuff. So, but with that being said, we will see you guys hopefully tomorrow for Laid Back Law with the other lawyers, and we'll be seeing you guys next Thursday.
All right. Now there's that little note, subtle note on the side, the bottom left corner. This little note right here. It's moving around. You might catch it. There's a button down below. It's called subscribe, and you know what? It's free. So why not? Please consider if you like this kind of thing. We would deeply appreciate if you subscribe. That'll give you alerts when the show is happening, if notifications work that day, and then we'll see you next time.